Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. And I've got a post-match analysis too for you guys, and that is because Lorenzo Musetti wins his first ATP title, beating Carlos Alcaraz, a fellow teenager, and of course a young superstar, really, in Carlos Alcaraz, in 3 sets in a very exciting match to say the least, at the Hamburg Open. 3-setter. We're going to get into it. Before we do, though, remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new as well. Thank you to everyone that has already liked the video and has already subscribed to the channel. Doing those two things really does help us out. If you're watching on a podcast platform, you know what to do as well. Leave a rating, review, follow us, subscribe. Thank you so much. And also, quick shout out to our members as well. Thank you to everyone who's become a member and supporting the channel even further. We really do appreciate it. Okay, Lorenzo Musetti now wasn't without its trials and tribulations, but he gets through it in the end, beating Carlos Alcaraz in 3 sets, 6-4, 6-7, 6-4. And in that tiebreaker, he had some match points. He had some match points in the second set. He had some match points in the tiebreaker, and he couldn't do it. Got taken to a third set, and in the end got it done, and got it done whilst breaking Alcaraz at 5-4. And you almost feel like it had to potentially be done that way because he was struggling to close it out on his serve. And we've seen it in the past when he's been 2-0 up in a lot of tournaments against big players. Tsitsipas this year at the French Open in the first round. Last year against Novak Djokovic. What was it in the fourth round? He was 2-0 up. And I get it. I get it. Like, these players are top players. And he didn't have match points against those guys. He did really well. He did really well, I think, to be fair, being in that position in the first place, being 2-0 up. And against Alcaraz, it was a similar story after he went a set up, and you're thinking, okay, we've got a final on our hands here, especially because Alcaraz had been playing some really good tennis throughout the tournament. And I think arguably had been playing better tennis, I think, going into this final. He'd blown away Khachanov, blown away. I mean, Molcan was a drubbing, really, in the end. The first set tiebreaker, but second set a breadstick. Musetti played Cerundolo, which is a good win because he just won an ATP title himself. But Alcaraz bageled Khachanov as well. Musetti played Derek Rakino, which is a tough one. So look, both players coming through some very accomplished clay quarters, and not just clay quarters, just players in general who can give you problems on the surface. And it's funny because I've got the clay court background, and it's suddenly out straight away. You're just like, okay, you know what? We're straight away back onto the clay after the grass, and we will be focusing on the hard court swing, of course, very, very soon with the US Open series. But I had to touch upon this, so I want to touch upon it more from a tactical and analytical point of view, because we can talk about what it means, and of course it's a battle of the next gen, and I hope to see this battle more and more as the years go on. I'm sure we will. And look, Alcaraz, Musetti, Rune, Korda, all of these guys, I've missed out quite a few, I'd imagine. Rusevori. You'd hope all of these players, all these young players will be battling it out in really exciting matches. And if this match is an indication of what's to come, then I'm extremely excited. So let's break it down. Lorenzo Musetti, now everyone knows that he is a clay courter. He is, at the moment, at the ripe young age that he is, right? As a teenager, he is still a clay courter. He's someone who can be dangerous on other surfaces, but realistically, he's at home and he's most comfortable on the red stuff. And with someone like himself, where I guess he has the tendencies as well to enjoy taking the ball high on the backhand side with a one-hander, it's interesting to see, because most players with one-handers don't enjoy playing on clay as much as other surfaces at times, because they don't like taking the ball really high on that backhand side. Himself in Musetti and Stefanos Tsitsipas are two of the only players, I think, on tour with one-handers who actually enjoy it. That's not to say that the other players with one-handers can't use the one-hander effectively on clay, or it's not serviceable. I think it is for a lot of them. But for these two especially, they actually like it. They would prefer that it's at shoulder height or even head height at times to it being at ankle height or knee height, and them having to kind of step down. However, in saying that, I think Musetti's backhand is just transcends, I think, surfaces. I think it is a really, really impressive one-hander. And I would imagine we will talk about it more and more as he gets older and older. And as long as he stays fit, we will be talking about it as if it's one of the best one-handers on tour, because it's already up there, I would say. Now, that gives him a distinct advantage against most players, because for most players, their backhands are a weakness, or at least in some way you're able to exploit it. Now, for a lot of players, it can be that they actually can't hurt you with the backhand side. So Musetti's able to kind of dictate in the backhand to backhand exchanges, or defensively, they're not able to actually stick with him, and then it goes shorter and he's able to step in and go either go into out with the forehand or into in, or even just drive the backhand on the line, which we know is something he loves to do, does Lorenzo Musetti. Against Alcaraz, I think a lot of people would have thought, well, Alcaraz's backhand is going to hold up against Musetti's backhand for the most part, because as a neutral and someone who's just watching it as a tennis fan, you'd see Alcaraz's game and think, well, he's got a bit of everything. There don't seem to be any glaring, obvious flaws in his game, in his armory. You'd say maybe the serve needs to be improved slightly a little bit in terms of hitting his spots, and I guess the effectiveness of it. And I think he's been working on that. But the backhand, a lot of people thought, well, no, it's really good. And for the most part, it is. But I think Musetti exposed Alcaraz's perceived frailty on the backhand side in terms of his defensive ability on that side. I don't think Alcaraz is particularly good. And to be fair, there aren't many players on tour that are very good at this, but I don't think he's particularly good at being rushed on the backhand side and being able to defend particularly well on that side when being rushed or when being stretched. I would say that Musetti was winning the majority of those rallies, and either he went into out forehand or cross-court backhand, and Alcaraz, when the ball was coming deep, when it was coming hard into that backhand side, it wasn't really holding up the way that you would expect it to. Especially on a surface like clay where it's slower, you would have expected Alcaraz to then have more time. Now, at Wimbledon, he lost, and understandably, I guess, to Sinner, where Sinner was absolutely hammering the backhand side, and he was having to slice a lot on the backhand. And I think that was uncomfortable for him to have to slice all the time. I don't think he was comfortable defensively on the backhand, going drive backhand, because he just, whenever he did, it would drop short. He just didn't have the time to hit the type of backhand he'd like. And it's something, obviously, that he needs to work on. I'd assume on the grass, that is. But that's a very fast surface. On the clay, it's slower, so he wasn't slicing a lot. There were times where he had to, because Musetti had him stretching. He had no other choice. But in some instances, it was just a case of the backhands weren't good enough. And the backhand-to-backhand exchanges, he came out second best in the majority of them. Now, that's potentially surprising for some of you, but for me, not so much, in the sense that I know how good Musetti's backhand is. And after seeing Alcaraz at Wimbledon, not just at Wimbledon, but even in the French against Zverev, again, he had some issues with the backhand-to-backhand rallies there again. And Zverev's got a fantastic backhand. So it almost seems like if he plays someone who has, close to an elite backhand, they can cause him big problems. If you don't have an elite backhand, he can stick with you. And I think Alcaraz has a very good backhand generally. Is it an elite backhand? I would say no. After watching him in the last 6 months, I would say no. His forehand, yes. I think there's still some work to be done in terms of his shot selection. And I think, he has an aggressive forehand, but maybe misses a bit too much in some instances. But I don't think that was the case in this match. I just think he was outplayed. And the most impressive thing for me about Lorenzo Musetti in this match was the fact that he was able to not only win the backhand-to-backhand exchanges for the most part and push Alcaraz back, make him feel uncomfortable, get a lot of short balls on that backhand side, and made him look like he wasn't particularly good at defending on that side. But in the forehand-to-forehand rallies, he also won a portion of points there. not just a portion, his fair share. Now, Alcaraz is seen as having an elite forehand, a forehand that he should be able to dictate with, and it's a weapon, and shouldn't really be able to get outmaneuvered from the back of the court in the forehand to forehand exchanges with pretty much anyone. With Musetti, though, he managed to do it. Now, I was really impressed. Now, there's two reasons why I think he has success. One, I think, yes, he definitely didn't hold back. He hit through the ball. He was aggressive on the forehand. He went deep into the Alcaraz forehand, tried to give him as little time as possible, and it worked in a lot of instances. And he didn't hold back. I think he took a lot more risks maybe than he might against other players, because he knew that if I give Alcaraz a lot of rallying balls to hit back, then more often than not, Alcaraz will hit a winner, or will be a really, really potent and powerful forehand that then Musetti has to switch from neutral or aggressive in the rally to defensive, and he doesn't want to be on the back foot. Musetti is like Alcaraz. I don't think either of them really want to defend. I think Alcaraz is a fantastic defender for the most part, but Musetti doesn't want to defend either. He wants to be on the front foot. And that means, okay, we're taking that extra percentage of risk that he might not take against other players, where he thinks I won't get hurt as much if I go rally ball into the forehand. But what he did is that he was measured in when he utilized those shots, right? When he utilized opening up on the forehand. And the biggest thing for me, the second point I want to make, and I think this is the biggest point, is the angles he was finding. I was so impressed with the amount of angles that he was able to find on the forehand cross court, the backhand cross, huge amount of topspin on those strokes for the most part, and it meant that he was able to find these fantastic angles where Alcaraz was being dragged out. And we know how athletic Alcaraz is, but Musetti was so clever in dragging him out wide that even someone as athletic as Alcaraz, he might be able to get to the ball, but he was in uncomfortable positions in a lot of the rallies. And that meant more errors than filtering through. It also meant Musetti being on the front foot in a lot of the rallies. And that's what, to me, was extremely impressive, was the angles he was finding in the rallies. And I think that's something that, on other surfaces, you are able to find the angles, but on clay especially, given the slower surface, given that it's more conducive to topspin, it will kind of kick off the surface. It will, give you more bang for your buck. And that does mean that you are able to find better angles. And we can use the example of someone like Stefanos Tsitsipas, who has a fantastic forehand cross-court on clay, and he's able to find these great angles a lot more than he is on other surfaces, right? And that's a good example. Musetti is similar, I think, and that's what really impressed me for the most part. I also think he did something that maybe a lot of people wouldn't have expected, which is I personally think that he utilized the drop shot a lot better than Alcaraz did. I think he utilized the drop shot a lot better than Alcaraz did. Now, Alcaraz has arguably got one of the best drop shots on tour. Musetti was really good with the drop shot, I thought. He used it at the right times. He would go kind of into out forehand, for example, to the backhand of Alcaraz, push him back, have him on the run, then play drop shot, and Alcaraz might get there, but he might go into the net. Alcaraz was still winning some of those points, but normally you'd expect him to chase down most of them and win the points. And similarly, when Alcaraz was drop shotting, Musetti was getting to them as well. Not all of them, but occasionally he was, and he has really good touch and feel around the net from what I saw as well. And I think Alcaraz is the same. So there were some incredible points from both players where, they were dragging each other backwards and forwards, side to side. And it was a pleasure to watch. It really was. I think, both these guys clearly have an abundance of talent. They really do. And we already know that about Alcaraz because of where he's at. He's now top 5 in the world. But for Musetti, I don't think he's too far off if he's able to adapt his game on the other surfaces. And I feel like he does have the ability to do that with the weapons he was showing. And I was really impressed with the into-out forehand, for example, as well. I thought that was really well utilized. Probably needs to develop a backhand slice for sure on other surfaces, but the serve was pretty good. I mean, he was hitting his spots, can potentially be bulked up a little bit. But I was impressed by the way that he came forward a lot on some of the points as well, where he came forward to the net, and I was impressed that he was willing to come to the net, because we know Alcaraz is. I would say Alcaraz didn't have the best of volleying days. I think there were some instances where he did really well to come to the net, serve volley, or hit a good approach shot and came to the net. But Musetti is actually very good at passing people at the net, and he passed Alcaraz multiple times at the net, which I thought was extremely impressive to see, for sure. And yeah, like Musetti and Alcaraz both able to pass each other kind of not at will, but they've got a pretty good chance of passing the opponent at the net. And that's what made it even more exciting, that both guys are willing to come forward, but also they'd get past at times. But on top of that, we'd see some fantastic points being constructed from both players. So really impressive. I'm just going to quickly kind of shout out some of the stats. I mean, first set percentage was 67% for Alcaraz, 60% for Musetti. First set points won, though. A difference here, because Musetti won 78% behind his first serve, 66% for Alcaraz. So Alcaraz will be a bit disappointed that he didn't do better on the 1+ plays. Musetti, I thought, was good at the 1+ plays. I think Alcaraz will be thinking maybe should have been a bit more expansive on that, or hit his spots better. I think maybe at times he wasn't particularly hitting his spots on the first serve. Second serve points won. Alcaraz did better in that department, 66%. 53% for Musetti, and breakpoint saved 2 out of 6 for Alcaraz, 3 out of 5 for Musetti. It was a very tight match. It was an exciting one. I mean, Alcaraz did so well to come back from, I think it was, he was 6-3 down in the tiebreaker in the second set, and he came back to win that tiebreaker 8-6. And then Musetti did well to, I think, recover mentally. And I think this was also a very mental game, because after the first set, Musetti winning it, he's got the momentum. Alcaraz recovered really nicely. He actually got broken, if I'm not mistaken, in that second set, recovered. Musetti then went on to, lose the tiebreaker after having multiple match points, right? 6-3 in the tiebreaker. And you're thinking, okay, well, Alcaraz has the momentum. A lot of people thinking Alcaraz is going to win the third set. Musetti recovered mentally really well, came back, and it's impressive. It's very, very impressive. So kudos to Lorenzo Musetti, his first ever ATP title. And I really do hope that he kicks on from here, because he's an exciting young player. And as I said, himself, Rune, Alcaraz, Ruusuvuori, who else? All these young players, right? Korda. I want to see all of them batting out, starting to make waves, and let's see their exciting brands of tennis. Because pretty much everyone that I know that's a younger player, they all seem to be extremely exciting. And that's what's so incredible to see. Nakashima as well, we saw in Wimbledon against Kyrgios. So yeah, looking forward to seeing these guys in action. Let me know your thoughts. Were you impressed with Musetti? Were you disappointed with Alcaraz? Or did you think actually Musetti was too good on the day? Did you watch it? If so, were you excited by it? Do you want to see more matchups between these two? Let me know. But yeah, definitely one of the matches of the year, I would say, in terms of the level it was played. I think it was a 500, right? So definitely one of the matches in terms of the year, in terms of 500s and best of 3 tennis, I think, for sure. But thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.